down.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Part of InterPride's ROPE program, which is Racism Oppression Awareness Program, we have a webinar series under the Rainbow Racism series. And the Rainbow Racism series actually addresses racism and biases that take place within queer spaces. So the goal is we need to clean up our own home before we can start telling people what they need to do. So that is what we're hoping to address with this series, to confront the biases that we face within our own community. So today, what we're going to do is talk about policing and pride. This is a very delicate situation that's taking place right now. I know that there have been several pride organizations that have decided not to have a police presence at Pride, but there are also some areas, some ordinances that require police presence. So how do we bring that together? How do we lessen the chasm, if you will, between policing and pride so that we can have a more unified relationship with the police and pride organizations? That is what we're hoping to tackle today. So by way of introduction, my name is Richard Breather Bell. I am the Vice President of Accessibility, Diversity, and Inclusion for InterPride. InterPride is an international organization of pride organizers. And I have with me today, Chase Jewell. Chase, would you introduce yourself and the guest speakers that we have as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Officer Chase Jewell. I'm with the Albuquerque Police Department in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been sworn with my department for about close to 3.5, going on to hopefully 4 years here at the end of the year. And in the room with me, I have Lieutenant Jennifer Garcia. I have Detective Michelle English and Lieutenant Gerard Bartlett. We are all advocates for our community ambassador program. I actually serve as the LGBTQI plus ambassador for my community here in Albuquerque with the Albuquerque Police Department. Lieutenant Jennifer Garcia kind of spearheads this whole program, and she's gotten all of us involved in all of our various community groups. So I know that she'll be able to speak a lot about what our program is, what it stands for. And I'll just kind of introduce everyone else. Detective Michelle English is with our recruiting unit. And, we actually worked our own Albuquerque Pride this last year together. We ran a recruiting table, and we can get into that a little bit later. And I also have Lieutenant Gerard Bartlett as well. He is with our Indigenous Persons Ambassador Group. And he oversees a lot of the Native American relationships that we have here, because we have a very large and diverse population in Albuquerque. I know we're all very excited to be here. I'm thrilled to talk with Richard. Richard and I have known each other for a little bit now and gotten to know each other through some past conversations. So thank you for having us.
Here, Chase and I had to work together when I was a board member of Albuquerque Pride. When I was president of Santa Fe Pride, this is exactly what we tried to do, an ambassador or liaison program, and unfortunately it never came to fruition. So when we heard about this with Albuquerque Pride, we were very excited to be part of this. And I'm looking forward to having some of these tough conversations so that we can move forward in our relationship. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question. So as I mentioned earlier, there have been pride organizations like Toronto, like New York, who have struggled as to whether or not to have police presence. There have been individuals who have attended prides and feel or have experienced a kind of traumatic experience when they see police presence at pride, depending on what they've had to endure. So my question is, if we're going to have police presence at Pride, what can we do to make sure that those who are coming to the parades and coming to the festivals feel more comfortable, feel safe in that space that is primarily for them?
Sure. I could start off, because I worked our last Pride. And for record, APD, my police department, we were the first law enforcement agency to be a partner, I would say, in Albuquerque's Pride, being allowed the opportunity to have not only our officers there assisting and directing traffic on part of the parade and part of the walk on the roadways, but also being in the actual event, working a table, handing out materials, and engaging with the community. I think that police presence in Pride is important. It's very important, and it's not only important to just have us there for just generalized safety reasons and concerns in the community, but it's there to help build the blocks and the platform with the community further. And the thing I learned with working with Albuquerque Pride is it's not something we can, as police, expect or one demand. It is what the community wants. And I think each individual community needs to come together with each other and make that decision. And the ambassador program has been a great outlet for us to be able to do a lot of these community outreach events because Lieutenant Garcia has handpicked each one of us for our communities for specific reasons. I am one of the very few members of my police department that, is openly bisexual, and that has, its own stigma that comes with that, one. And then two, but then that gives me the ability to, I guess, be more personable when it comes to approaching, my community. As an officer and even as not an officer, I went, Richard, with you to those meetings with Albuquerque Pride in non-uniform. I came completely in my own car, out of dress, and I just came as me to present not only myself, but to present my department and to see if this is an appropriate fit at the current time we're in to allow Albuquerque police to be a part of Pride. And then it ultimately came up to the decision of, one, the board, and two, most importantly, the community. And a lot of the praise we got came from the board and from the community when we were at Pride. I know Detective English can talk about the experience that her and I both had. We worked both days at Pride the whole time, and it was amazing. I never saw the community. I never expected the community to accept police, especially in what we're all going through now. In such an appropriate way and positive way, to where now it's actually, I think, strengthened our community more. I speak with more of our board members from Pride. I have a lot more intertwining relationships with other, LGBTQI plus community groups in Albuquerque that were connected because of my work in Pride. So I actually think it's paving the way to allow us to be more involved in the community and to have these conversations and work hard with one another.
Is there anyone else who wanted to share, comment?
I'll just say that, yeah, I did the recruiting event at Pride last year with Chase. It was great. We have tried in the past as a recruiting unit to get into Pride, have a recruiting table, because what better way to build a bridge between the two communities, with the police department and the gay community, whether to have more people hired from the gay community into the police department. I've always been out. It was hard at first. I told my background detective that I was gay. He didn't give two craps. I haven't had a problem with it, but I'm also female. So to me, it seems a little easier. So Chase, I'm so, proud of you that you could come out. I don't know if you had a hard time or not, but it would be great to do more recruiting events to get more people from the gay community hired.
And Gerard, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, and if it looks like
Yes,
there's a lot going on, Richard, I'm actually on a SWAT call now, so that's why I'm in my car. I wasn't able to go to the office, but I think your question was, and I wrote it down. Is what can we do to make others feel safe in these spaces that aren't ours? Mm-hmm. And when you asked that question, what I thought of is that we don't know, and we don't know until we have conversations like this, to learn more about how we make those spaces feel more safe for others. And I was thinking of, it was Obama's 6 pillars of constitutional policing, and one of those is building trust and legitimacy. And I know that's what Chase has done. And he's also brought the rest of us in with him to help build that trust and legitimacy with the LGBTQ plus community. So I want to thank him for that too.
Absolutely. And let me say that Chasen was a detective English. I, for one, am very proud of you, to be honest, of sexuality, because it is important. It does matter. Comfort you feel when you know that they were like you who are on the police force. So it's encouraging, and it's a very brave thing to do. So I certainly want to commend you too, and thank you for your honesty and your presence.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, another question we ask is, there are those, we talked about one of the reasons that people are very uncomfortable about having police presence at prides, or because some of the traumatic experiences that and interactions they've had with the police. We left a board meeting in Texas last night, and one of our board members, trans, was stopped by the police. There are a lot of one-way streets, and she went down the wrong way on the street. And if you saw this woman, she's just absolutely stunning and very much like a woman. She full makeup, hair. She had a lot of clean showing. On her driver's license, it says her name, and it so has the picture of her as she appears now. But as far as her gender, it has it listed as male. So during the interaction with the police officer, he referred to her as sir. And when you misgender someone who is non-binary, it makes them feel like they don't fit in. And I think it was clear that anyone who looked the way she did, you would never refer to this person as a sir. So she was very upset. My question is, what are you doing personally to make sure that you are only aware of being the correct pronouns when it comes to trans and individuals, but also for those who are part of the queer community who just had some negative experiences dealing with the police? What can we do for them to feel more comfortable, to be more trusting when their interactions with police?
Yeah, absolutely. So, aside from me working as a community ambassador, I actually am a routine field officer. I take calls for service in Albuquerque on the graveyard shift. So I interact with the public and do traffic stops all the time. And I have personally ran into this issue myself. And I pride myself on trying to be very cautious and aware of, gender pronouns and how somebody identifies. But it's a humbling moment. I think if you get it wrong, if I get it wrong, there's nothing wrong with just asking how they would like to be addressed. And sometimes I know there's a lot of my partners and officers that are uncomfortable with asking, but it's a question we have to ask. And I know the community and that specific individual is okay with responding with, hey, I'm not he, I am her. Please address me as that. And as officers, we take an oath to give respect and integrity to our community. We need to respect that identification and then proceed forward with that. I think if you've never interacted with that individual before and you misidentify them, I know I have many times, it's a humbling moment to yourself. You just got to understand that you made a mistake, apologize if it's appropriate, and then proceed on. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Personally, that's what I do. And when it comes to, how us as police are, working to rebuild the broken relationships, because I definitely understand that there are some people out there that have had continuous bad encounters with police, and it extends even further than just gender misidentification. There's a lot more that goes into it. I spent a lot of time working with the Transgender Resource Center here of New Mexico, working with them and talking with their community group about their experiences with our own police officers in the Southeast Area Command, which is where they're kind of located at. And so the thing that I'm trying to pillar, and I think that us as officers need to work on, is just having the conversations with these communities and holding ourselves accountable to training and ensuring that we're learning about gender, we're learning about proper gender pronouns, identification, and all of the topics that go along with it. Because there are a lot of officers that just aren't familiar with any of this, and they don't know, that there are more pronouns than just he and her, that there's a much deeper and bigger variety, and that it is okay if you don't understand to just ask the question. I don't think anybody in the community expects everybody to be a professional on gender pronouns right away. But as officers, if it is a response that we're not familiar with or that we might not be personally comfortable with, it's beyond that, because we're not here to give our own personal opinion on somebody's gender pronouns. We're here as police. We're here to address a problem or a concern, and we need to identify them the way that makes them feel safe and makes them feel comfortable. We can't let personal feelings or attributes affect that. And I think that that is what's caused a lot of issues with the community, is maybe there are some officers throughout our country that have let personal perceptions on how they believe people should or should not identify affect their decision making in their job. And that's why I think the ambassador program is great, because we as ambassadors are working with not only the community, but we're working with our officers and our partners to address these concerns. That was the number one concern that was brought up to me by not only Albuquerque Pride, but the Transgender Resource Center, the University of New Mexico Pride as well, is the issues with gender misidentification. So I've been working closely with the APD Academy to not only revamp training to our cadets, but to have more consistent training about gender identification and everything that goes along with it, rather than what we used to have, which was a hour-long block of instruction one day during the academy, and you not only got taught gender identification, you got taught 5, 6 other things in that time frame. And addressing that's a problem. You can't learn gender identity in an hour. You can't learn it in a week or a month. You need to follow up on it often. And so it's a process that begins there. And then my own personal ideas is I'm working on trying to make these community events with the LGBTQI plus community available for all officers and all area commands to join. Because I think if people begin to network with one another, and officers that are maybe not so familiar with, a transgender individual or a non-binary individual, if they interact with these people and share similar experiences and maybe a cup of coffee or just a conversation, that bridge can be built. Now, is that going to happen overnight? No, because we need to continue to have these conversations and come up on our promises to train better, to be better out on the streets. And maybe that's going to build a better connection for our community to want to have those conversations with us and want to come and, join us in those community events, hopefully at some point in the near future. So I hope that kind of answered everything. I don't know if anyone else wanted to chime in a little bit.
I'll jump in real quick, and I think that Chase pretty much covered everything. But one of the things is we don't know what we don't know. So when we're invited to learn more about a community, we get to know about that community and understand how something that we may have done in the past or we may be doing, and I'm saying we as a profession, how that was taken and why there's that negative connotation against us or about the way that we respond. And the majority of our officers are phenomenal, and I don't think that they would ever intentionally do anything to offend anybody. I'm not going to say that there aren't those few in any department. But again, we don't know. So invite us in, let us learn more about the community, teach us about gender pronouns. I know that, like Chase made a comment, that sometimes officers get uncomfortable because they don't know what's going to come across as offensive. Can I ask, is that okay for me to ask? And learning and making us feel a little bit at ease at times may help, but we're trying to make you, feel at ease when you're coming into contact with us. I will tell you, I used to work for overtime. I used to work Pride every year. And I would always tell everybody it was my favorite event because it was an event where I saw everybody having fun and being who they were. They were just out there enjoying themselves, celebrating who they are as an individual. And I just loved to be a part of that. So even though I was working and I was on the outside watching everybody else, it was something that made an impact on me And I, again, would volunteer, and, just being able to go in this year and sit at the booth for a little bit and talk to individuals, that was incredible. It was a great experience, and I hope to do more of that.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Michelle, did you want to go, or is it okay if I go?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Richard, going back to your question, I think there were two parts. It was like, what are we doing personally? And personally, to echo some of Chase's sentiments, in my own practice, in my own job here, I probably have less citizen contact than Chase does. In fact, I know I do, since I'm a lieutenant. In my own work, I probably write a lot more than I speak. So in my writing, I've become more consciously aware of whether or not I know, or even have an inkling of how, or what my perception is when I'm starting to describe someone, whether it is based on gender pronouns or what their name might be. And if I don't know, I've consciously been able to go back and rewrite that sentence so that it's not based off of a judgment or bias. That's something that's been new. I also think about, the year 2020 kind of changed a lot. I don't think pre-2020 we're here right now having this conversation, and I'm glad we are. But I think that the second part of your question had to do with building the trust and repairing some of that trauma. And I feel like by doing this, by taking part in this program, the ambassador program with the Albuquerque Police Department, it was an opportunity to kind of have these ideas and thoughts, but being affected by 2020 and maybe put some of it into action. So for me personally, being here today and speaking with you and taking part in this is me personally, still learning in that direction too. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
Absolutely. Detect English.
So what I do personally, if I hear something that, it's maybe a different opinion that, or something I don't agree with, I just, maybe a little education, someone who's, straight and doesn't, not involved in the gay community, just, I just let them know, hey, this is, you're not correct. This is the way it is, blah, blah, blah. But I hardly have to deal with that in my job because, I work with a bunch of great people. And so I rarely hear anything that's inappropriate, luckily.
I think that Michelle kind of leads off a good point, though. I think self-accountability and then accountability to our peers is a big part of it. I know if I'm out on a call with officers that maybe I haven't worked with before, and it is maybe a domestic dispute between, two, gay individuals, and people are letting, again, personal feelings come into decision-making as in our profession, it's appropriate. And I know our department has a policy about this, about calling that person out and ensuring that that action is not allowed, because they can get reprimanded for these kind of for comments or for gestures or for harassment or anything like that, however it's perceived. But it also comes back into me, recognizing that, hey, that action isn't okay. Saying that statement's not okay. Hey, this person's told you their gender identity 3-4 times, you need to fix it. I need to be calling them out, because then I can also get into trouble as well too. So it goes more into just an individual thing. I think that we look out for our peers, and that if our peer isn't really getting the point, or they're not thinking about it, or maybe they're making a mistake, we need to call them out and redirect that that narrative, and not in a mean or an aggressive way. I think, as Detective English said, it's just some education. There are some people out here that just don't know and they don't understand. The partner I work with every single day, he is a heterosexual straight male that is married to a woman, and he isn't an expert on these things. He knows about me, he knows about my sexuality, about my past and my background, and he's working every day to be better at it. But he's okay and has an open mind to having difficult conversations like this, and maybe learning and understanding a topic that he's not familiar with. And I think that that same narrative is said for everybody I've ever worked with in my department. I've never clashed heads with anybody or had them treat me any differently because I am bisexual or anything like that for my sort of job. But if somebody tries to, be offensive towards me, I call it out. And I think that the same mentality would be said for when we're out taking calls and interacting with the general public.
I appreciate the points that you all brought out about the importance of self-awareness. Is so true. My day job, I'm a training development specialist for corrections. So I present workshops to inmates as well as staff members. And these, some of the topics are opioid overdose prevention, PTSD, adverse childhood experiences, harm reduction. And today I was at the Las Cruces facility, and we talked about cultural competency and cultural humility. And one of the points we brought out is that cultural competency is taking the time to learn this information about your culture as well as cultures that differ from yours. And that culture humility takes it to the next level, where it is recognizes that it's a lifelong journey, that it's never a one and done. Oh, I already took that class. No, this is a lifelong journey under cultures, understanding communities within communities, which is what we oftentimes interact with, people coming from multiple communities, and recognizing the needs of each of those communities. So my question is, what is Albuquerque Police Department, specifically with the Ambassador Program, doing to recognize the importance of cultural competency as well as it leads to cultural humility?
Yeah. So I think Lieutenant Garcia can maybe speak more about the specifics on what the program is going to direct itself to. But things that I've seen is exactly what we're doing in this conversation is a great example. I know this morning, Lieutenant Bartlett Gerard, he led a cleanup effort that involved multiple different community groups throughout our Southeast Area Command, which is a little bit more of a impoverished area command here in Albuquerque. But with that being said, I don't know if let's see if Richard comes back before I continue. Sorry about that, Richard. You disappeared for a second, so I paused myself. Are you with us? Richard, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I can hear you. I don't think he can.
Issues.
There we go. He's back. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulty, but I was talking about Gerard's efforts this morning with the Southeast cleanup effort. It's a pretty impoverished area in Albuquerque that intertwines with a lot of different community groups. It's actually labeled the international district because we not only have a lot of different race, ethnicities, but we have a lot of culture and individuals that live in this community. And Lieutenant Bartlett is a lieutenant during the day shift hours of our Southeast area, and he is forefronting a great effort in community cleanup, and that intertwined a lot of different community resources. And I can definitely let him speak about that in a little bit later. But I think Albuquerque Police specifically is working, I think, a little harder than a lot of other departments. I mean, this ambassador program is the first of its kind, if I'm not mistaken. There's not any other agency that I've ever interacted with that has a program that is solely providing each individual community group with a direct voice into the department. And then that's definitely praise to our Chief Harold Medina, who forefronted this project and wanted this. There are community members that have my personal cell phone number. There are directors of organizations that can call me, text me at any time of the day or night with community concerns. And I think Albuquerque Police is really working deeply and putting forth a lot of effort into wanting to rebuild those connections with the community. And this program is a way that's doing that. We hold not only community events with each one of these organizations, we have follow-up phone calls, conversations. It's developing into more of a personal relationship than just a business relationship. Because I know beforehand, as Lieutenant said, before 2020, we were doing coffee with a cop, and that was just where it was. That's our community outreach. That's where everything went. But we learned a lot with how the community responded during the 2020, protests against police and the defund the police movement. And we learned that we are agents of the people. We are community members ourselves. We all live here in Albuquerque. I am born and raised here, and that I'm more than just a police officer. And my agency understood that. And we're like, okay, well, we need to have a humanly approach to the community. And that's how we developed this program. And that's why I thought I wanted to join it right away, because I feel that this vision and the way that this program is developed in terms of addressing relationships with the community is exactly where we need to be if we want to rebuild connections. And I actually think we've come a long way. I think beforehand, the Transgender Resource Center never would have let a police officer into that safe space. They allowed me to go over to that space. I spent a good half day with them, just having food and talking and laughing and making jokes and building a personal relationship. And they were doing that with a police officer. And, I thought that was a great opportunity. I think that this program itself is really developing a lot of great relationships. I don't know, Lieutenant Garcia, if you had more to speak about the specifics on what the program's doing or the department's doing.
Yeah, I think that the department's doing a lot. We definitely could do more, but this is something that we can't do on our own. We need the community's help. We're trying to train a small group of people right now who are our ambassadors. But these individuals have all volunteered to do this. They want to make the community better. They want to bridge these gaps. They are gathering as much information as they can so we can pass that on to our officers. Every ambassador is responsible for learning what their community. Am I breaking up with everybody? Can you guys
No,
hear
we
me?
can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Every officer is responsible, or every ambassador, from going out to the community that they work with and getting information from them on what that specific community organization, those community groups want us to know. Because if they don't share with us, then we don't know exactly what to go out and teach our officers. We have an opportunity for different community groups to meet with our cadets. They can not only go in and talk to our cadets, but they can sit down for lunch with them and join them for lunch and just have an open dialogue with them, which I think is great, because then you get to meet people that maybe you wouldn't normally be around or socialize with and see them as people. I think Chase said it perfectly, and I tell people every day that when I go home from work, I'm a member of this community. While I'm at work, my siblings, my parents, my aunts and uncles, they're community members, and I want to know that they are being respected. If they ever come into contact with law enforcement, I expect them to be treated extremely well, but no better than anybody else. So we need to treat every single person as if that was our family member.
So we have one more question. So many in the African American community have the talk. And what that talk is about how to respond to police officers when we're pulled over. This talk is something that's given to us as children throughout our lives, hands at 10 and 2, yes sir, no ma'am, those kind of things. Parents want the children to get home safely, and whatever other issues, they can deal with that later. But they want them to get home. That is the point, get home safely. So right now, this country seems to be more divided than any time in my 51 years on the planet I've seen anything like this, where we have terms that are defund the police, back the blue, and it places people on one side or the other, and it doesn't seem like there's any room to meet in the middle when it this. So there are those who feel like when it's use terms like defund the police, that it means to alternate some of the resources that the police are getting to other community programs to deal with mental illness and so forth. But there are also those who feel like defund the police, take all the money out, get rid of the police, and have chaos. And then when it comes to Back the Blue, there are those who feel like, look, these are community members who are sworn to serve and protect, and let's back them. But there are also those who fight backing the blue means back the police officers no matter what they do. So with us being on two different sides, what can we do to bridge better understanding, to come together as communities, to be supportive of the police, supportive of the communities that they serve?
So the way I like to pitch it to friends, family about what this program's intended for is, and as you said, right, like obviously before 2020 and even way before that and even now after that, we were going down a one-way road. One person was going one way and one person was going head on with them. We were colliding about various issues, and we had a completely split ideology about what policing was, what the mission of it was. There was no mid ground, as you were saying. No one was wanting to cross the aisle in that sort of context and want to have a conversation. I always pitch it as we are driving, us as police, as the government, as the state, on one side of a 2-lane, one-way street. The community is right next to us in the other car. We are driving to the same destination, but we need to do that drive together at the same pace and at the same step, which is why I believe with police, every agency across this country, I think, is having a humbling moment, whether that was right at 2020 or whether that's right now on March 25th of 2022. There's departments all across this country that are having humbling moments that, hey, we can't be going head on with our community anymore. We need to step back. We need to listen to them. We need to hear concerns and have discussions. And I think the community has kind of felt that same way too. We have a lot of, individuals in our African-American community that actually work with our chief of police on a personal level. They call and talk with him all the time about policy ideas, and about situations that are going on in the city. And I think the community has also woke up and realized, hey, we need to do more than just, ignore the police, yell and scream at them, push back. We need to want to come and meet in the middle and talk about, hey, this is a problem. How can we fix it together as a group? And I think the city of Albuquerque and Albuquerque police have done that with, again, the establishment of our program. It's still in the beginning stages, but we have made a lot of progress with community relationships, a lot of progress with having these difficult conversations, and just a lot of progress in satisfying the expectations of our community. We have created the Albuquerque Community Safety Team, the ACS team, who responds currently right now, because the team is growing. They respond to a lot of non-police required calls, mental health calls, homeless calls, people that are suffering from narcotic abuse or welfare checks or any of that sort of stuff. We're now having a third response system so that police are not going to non-police matters, really, and same thing with our firemen and our EMS, that they're not needing to be stretched thin on all of our other resources. And I think that that's our humbling moment, is that APD and the city of Albuquerque realized very quickly with the pushback we got during 2020 that there's a problem with our current system and we got to fix the system. And how do we do that? We reached out to our community members, and they were willing to take the step forward and come and sit down and talk with us. And with that is development of new trainings for our cadets, whether that be new tactics that they use to engage drivers on traffic stops, how they feel about, uncomfortable individuals out on the streets, or, just anything that goes sort of that way. And those trainings and those conversations are not only being led by our department, but they're getting a lot of community input primarily into them, because the community is vocalizing, hey, we're having concerns with how our officers interact with the African-American community. So we're listening to that community and we're writing out their ideas and we're pitching it into trainings and putting it into practice. Is it a process that happens overnight? No. And I think that that's something the community is understood, and that we as police is understood, is that we just can't fix community police relationships in an hour or in a day-long training. It is a continuous, constant, moving practice. And it's a continuous working relationship. Again, we're two cars driving on a two-lane road on a one-way street to the same exact destination. And I think that that destination is a perfect a perfect melody between community and between policing. And it's an individual effort as all of us as police officers. But I think Albuquerque, and I give my department a lot of praise, has really taken a lot of big steps forward compared to a lot of the other agencies. And I can just do nothing but encourage those agencies to finally want to have these conversations, because it's not going to go away. The community is not going to just instantly forget about 2020. We're not going to just move past it. We need to fix it. We need to put we need to put words into practice and consistency into that practice. Because if we don't, we're going to just keep having these in the middle, head-on collisions with one another for the next however long. And so I encourage communities that will hopefully watch our interview or listen to our stories, really challenge their police departments to want to make an initiative like we're doing here in Albuquerque with this program, and want to make a change, because we can't police a community if the community doesn't want us or want us to be here. And I think we realize that really quickly. And so that's kind of my 2 cents about it. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to jut in about it. I can ramble, so my bad. All right, I talked it out of everybody. Good.
Lieutenant Gerard.
I can add a little bit. Hearing you talk about the talk, Richard, that you talk about this talk that you have, that community members have with their children, and it makes me think of like communication I have with my own kids about police. And even though I have no idea what it's like to be a Black person and have this talk, I find myself struggling to tell my son even like what I do or how it might be helpful for others sometimes. The one thing and this is cliche, it's cliche for Chase and for Jennifer and Michelle, but there's one quote or saying from Sir Robert Peel, which is considered the quote unquote grandfather of modern day policing, and that's, the police are the public and the public are the police. And I think it always reminds me of the fact that regardless of where we're at in life or who we are, we're all responsible for the safety and peace of our community in some way, shape, or form. And that's always helpful for me.
So
And I
once
just want
again,
to
I
say
want to
that,
thank you all for taking the time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that, you were talking about there being two sides and how do we get together. One of the things that I think we need to hear, if you ever have a negative interaction, if you hear of somebody having a negative interaction with law enforcement or what they perceive to be a negative interaction, because you and I may interact together and I say something that is offensive to you and I don't even realize it, or it maybe truly is offensive. Please reach out to us, let us know, because that's the only way that we can improve ourselves. We can be told how well we're doing, and that's fine and dandy, but if we don't know when we've done something that we need to improve upon, then we're not able to improve upon it. And like when you have a child, you teach them, okay, well, that was okay, but really you should be doing something this way, or maybe you shouldn't say that because here's why. If we don't know, we can't improve upon it. So please, when we're not meeting up to the community standards, I want to know, because that's the only way that I can work on moving us to bring us together.
Absolutely. Final thought, Lieutenant English? Detective English, I'm sorry.
My slant always comes from recruiting. I'm not an ambassador, but I am a recruiter. So I have interacted with applicants who were transgender. So I do my very best to make them feel welcome, that I support them, and I do everything I can to let them know that, hey, we want them on this department. So that's what I personally do. If you have other ideas, let me know. And because I don't know what else to do except recruit more people from the queer community.
Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you all for taking in to have this discussion. I think we're all in agreement these discussions are important for us to, bridge the gap it's important for us to heal, and we can't do that without effective communication. So thank you for that. I know that recently I was pulled over in Santa Fe for speeding, and I guess I was speeding. I can't really dispute it. But as someone who grew up in Los Angeles, you have all the thoughts that come to your mind. You remember what to do, where to place your hand, and all of that. When a police officer came over, he told me that I was speeding, wanted to see, license and registration. And then he came back and he put a warning, but just be careful. He said, I see that you work in corrections. He said, I used to work in corrections. And he said, so just, be safe and getting to work this morning. And then when I looked up, I thought, oh, wow, he's cute. It's like I didn't even pay attention to him because I was in that mindset to do when you get pulled over by the police. Later on, I realized he made an effort to get on common ground. He mentioned, I used to work in corrections. He mentioned about a supervisor who was there. I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back on it, I think he was trying to lower the anxiety level that he can tell I was feeling. And I thought, wow, if we can get a little bit more of that, that will go a long way in helping us to, rebuild this relationship between our communities, our respective communities and policing. So that is also what these workshops could do. So thank you. We appreciate all of you taking the time. This is recorded, and when we release it, I will be sure to let you know so that you have a chance to watch it or send it to whoever you think might benefit. And thank you. Be safe out there. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you, Richard, and everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.